It's a pleasure to come here before you to explain the international accounting history activities that I have performed during the decade from 2000 to 2009. But first of all, I would like to take this opportunity to express my deep sense of gratitude towards the Board of Directors of MUFAD, the Turkish Association of Accounting and Finance Academicians, towards the Executive Committee of the Balkans and Middle East countries' Second International Conference on Auditing and Accounting History, and above all, towards Professor Dr. Oktay Güvenli for having granted me one of the two first lifetime achievement honors that MUFAD has begun this year to award in recognition of my contribution to accounting history throughout the world during the last decade and of my increasingly taking part in these activities in Turkey. This is the reason of my presence here. I must confess that I am not quite sure whether I have really deserved or not the great honor of receiving this award. I am rather inclined to think of the second option. Be that as it may, of what I am completely sure is of my satisfaction and joy to see the emergence of Turkey as a power in accounting history in such a short period of time, thanks in a great part to the drive and initiatives of MUFAD, an association that was first established at the end of 1998. As to my accounting historian activity at last decade, I realize now that while since the very beginning, about 1979, of my interest in accounting history, I had been preferably presenting my researches in the English-speaking area, at the start of last decade, that is, the decade taken into consideration for the award, I began unconsciously to displace my preferences to continental European and Latin American countries. Reflecting on it, I find that perhaps there were several reasons for this change. The first of them, because the good Anglo-Saxon friends that I had made in the first times, Bessie Lamey, Paul Garner, David Forrester, and so on, had retired from active researching or even had died. On the other hand, the circumstances brought me new friends in Italy, Portugal, and lastly in Turkey. In effect, the 5th centenary of the publication of Pacioli's Summa gave occasion to the beginning of a very close friendship with Carlo Antinori. He was a great specialist on Pacioli's works, perhaps the greatest one. I had translated into Spanish the Tractatus Particularis de Computis et Scripturis and published in English a couple of studies that threw light on some obscure points of this work. The coincidence of interests awoke a feeling of sympathy between us. We published together a book on Pacioli and became great friends. He, alone or with his wife Angela, stayed with us at home in several occasions. The same did we with them. My grandchildren call him Nonno Carlo, that is, Granddad Charles. As a consequence of this friendship, I became life member of the Italian Association of Accounting History and was invited to all its congresses and meetings. This gave me the opportunity to also become good friends with Giovanna Nobile, Giuseppe Catturi, Giuseppe Galassi, Gianfranco Cavazzoni, and other Italian historians. As regards Portugal, on the occasion of their intention to found an accounting history center, Manuel Patuleya and Manuel Benavente, president and manager, respectively, of Apotec, that is, the Portuguese Accountants Association, asked me for advice, and then we also became good friends. They have also invited me to participate in all their congresses, whereupon I also made a good friendship with Hernani Carqueja, Lucia Rodriguez, Joaquim Guimaraes, etc. These reasons could explain why most of my foreign production in last decade was presented in Portugal and Italy and published in Italian journals or joint books. Moreover, there was another reason, perhaps not so much apparent, but not less actual. When I began to have interest in accounting history, we were only a handful of historians. Most of us had a love of history, or even have had some instruction in it. It was like a big family. The atmosphere was cordial and warm. New historians were friendly welcome. All of us felt that we were friends with one another. This climate was favored by the fact that accounting history did not count at all in academic life. It was rather considered an extravagance. This fact created among us a feeling of complicity. In the 19th, the things began to change. The interest in accounting history began to experience an important increase worldwide, above all in Anglo-Saxon countries, where the spreading of the new accounting history, incorporating postmodernist ideas, was especially rapid. This provoked an eruption of accounting scholars who see in accounting history a new way to make career, since the discipline began speedily to gain consideration in the academic world, with all the usual side effects: competitiveness, rivalry, cliques formation, etc. Logically, all of these, consequence of the progress, came to stir the once quiet waters. The atmosphere was no longer so friendly and calm, and I sought refuge in the continental European countries, where the new wave has not arrived with so much fervor, and so they conserved the old historical practices and traditions. My dedication to Latin America was motivated by my election in 2004 as chairman of the Board of Trustees of the Academy of Accounting Historians of the United States for the period from 2005 to 2007. At the end of the term of office, I was re-elected for another period, that is from 2008 to 2010. The Academy had interest to let know its activities in Latin America countries, and because of that, I paid visits to Colombia, Cuba, and Brazil. Coming now to the specific international events and personal activities that I met with last decade, I think for several reasons that the most significant one was the convening of the 8th World Congress of Accounting Historians in Madrid, which took place just at the very beginning of the decade, that is in summer 2000. I first met there Professor Gubemli. He presented a paper on the recording methods used in accounting systems of the Ottoman Empire in the 16th century. I believe that this was the first time that a Turkish scholar participated at the World Congress of Accounting Historians. Thereafter, we met in the United States at several meetings of trustees and officers of the Academy, as well as at several accounting historians' congresses. We struck a good friendship with one another. This explains my taking part in the MUFAD activities. Among these activities, it is worthy of mention the interview that Professor Oktay Gubemli made me in 2007. It was published in Turkish in the MUFAD's journal and in English in our journal online, The Computis. At the inaugural session of the 12th World Congress of Accounting Historians, convened by Professor Oktay Govembli, which was held in Istanbul in 2008, I presented a paper on the orientations and volume of accounting history research in the 21st century. It was published in the Congress proceedings and reprinted with permission of MUFAD in the Compites. In my condition of President of the Commission of Accounting History of AECA, that is, the Spanish Association of Accounting and Business Administration, I had the pleasure to intervene in the collaboration agreement signed last year between MUFAD and AECA. This agreement has a clause stipulating that special care will be devoted to develop a close collaboration in matter of accounting history. I also participate at the present Balkans and Middle East countries' second international conference on auditing and accounting history, where I present a paper explaining the privileged way that accounting history offers to approach historical research, illustrating this thesis by means of the accounts kept on occasion of the war of France and the Holy See against Spain, held from 1556 to 1559. During the decade from 2000 to 2009, I presented 8 papers in several Italian congresses, namely in Naples, Caserta, Siena, Bari, Pisa, and Perugia. All papers were published in Italian journals or joint books. In Portugal, I presented 5 papers in Lisbon, 4 of them at the congresses convened by Apotec, and 1 in December 2002 at the workshop organized jointly by Apotec and the European Institute of Advanced Studies in Management. Just on this occasion, I received the first copy of the first Shrift, that is, a special issue honoring my academic career that the British journal Accounting, Business and Financial History dedicated to me. Only Basil Yemei had received previously such distinction. As regards to my activity in Latin America, I have to say that I gave a speech in Cuba on the nature, scope, methodology, and the state of the art in accounting history. A seminary of a week on the same subject in Colombia, and a speech in Brazil on Pacioli's mathematical thought and the development of commercial instruction, an instruction that, as you know, pivots on accounting and commercial arithmetic. Apart from that, I published 2 papers in Colombian journals. My preference for continental European and Latin American countries did not mean that I had totally abandoned the English-speaking area. Of course not. I presented papers at the World Congresses of Accounting Historians in 2004, 2006, and 2008, held respectively in St. Louis, Oxford, Nantes, and Istanbul, and also at other conferences. A couple of them have been published in journals such as Review of Accounting and Finance and the Accounting Historians Journal. Well, that is all. I have arrived at the end of the narration of these small flashes of my academic activity during the decade that has been awarded with this important lifetime achievement honor. One of the most remarkable and pleasant events that have happened to me personally during this decade has been the opportunity to know Turkey. It has been a real privilege and pleasure for me to know a country with such an ancient and fascinating history, and with so friendly, warm, and respectable people. I thank you very much for your attention.